opportunities within the European Union. It is estimated that in the European Union in 2017, gross revenues of cooperation platforms and service providers amounted to tens of billions of euros. Experts estimate cooperative economy could contribute from 160 to 572 billion euro to the European Union economy. On the other hand, the sharing economy also has a significant impact on the quality of life. It provides an opportunity for additional earnings, a polygon for getting to know entrepreneurship, and preparing for entry into the labor market. We will get into these interesting details a bit later in a panel discussion. Let me as well say a few words on organizers' part. This event is funded and supported by European Liberal Forum, together with Institut Zavod 14, Institut Novum, and Friedrich Naumann Stiftung. If you wish, please do share your thoughts, comments, or photos on our social network connections. Facebook, Twitter, please check on the ELF blue panel on the sidebar. And now, without further ado, I kindly invite Mr. Alexander Stonik, Director of Institut Zavod 14, to address us.
Dear guests, dear participants of the round table, dear partners, dear liberal friends. On behalf of Zavod 14, it is indeed my honor and great privilege to welcome you all at our second International ELF event this year. We are honestly delighted to have you here today as we organize this event in cooperation with European Liberal Forum, as already mentioned, and with our partners, Friedrich Naumann Foundation and Novum Institute. As some you may know, Zavod 14 is a very young non-profit civil society organization with main aim to promote social liberal ideas. And from this year, Zavod is also proudly full member of the European Liberal Forum network. It has been a successful year as we have already organized a series of events related to the NGOs, future and challenges of young people in the 21st century, and challenges of blockchain and investing or regulating cryptocurrencies. Today's event is focused on another topical issue, about sharing economy. We also sometimes call it collaborator economy, access economy. We will discuss these terms later. And we already discussed this sharing economy issue in March last year at Zavod 14 National Roundtable. In fact, the term sharing economy emerged out of idea of collaborative consumption, and it's very old, actually 4 decades. It was introduced in 1978, so this year is 4 decades of this term. The sharing economy simply speaks to the idea that consumers share access to the goods and services. Thus, the concept is not new. What is new is the technology, which allows those exchanges to happen. And especially the last 2 decades, sharing economy has penetrated in various sectors, such as transportation, property, fashion, education, healthcare, and now even consumer goods. While sharing economy is still in its infancy, the journey has been a promising one so far. Sharing economy services has been the forerunners of the innovative entrepreneurship and new business models, and most of the times this occurs through collaborative online platforms. However, sharing economy has also created tensions between new service providers and existing market operators. In addition, Europe, and especially Eastern Europe, and Slovenia is part of Eastern Europe, is not yet reaping the full benefits of the digitalization of the economic rewards that the sharing economy may offer. So we will try at this roundtable, which follows, we'll try to open what are the main obstacles and what we can do to unlock them. In the EU, regulatory difference and market fragmentation in digital fields are seen as major impediments to growth and business development, as evidenced by the European Commission's 2016 communication titled A European Agenda for the Collaborative Economy. The European Commission is looking at how we can encourage the development of new and innovative services and the temporary use of assets while ensuring adequate consumer and social protection. But the challenge is not thin, given the very nature of these new economic models in the sharing economy. Not only is the fast-moving digital transformation, which makes it close to the try to hit a moving target, But the sharing economy also touches upon a number of areas such as taxation, labor market law, consumer protection, and other regulations that are national competencies. The key is thus to strike the difficult balance between much-needed clarity and ensuring a level playing field without hindering the development of the European sharing economy. Ladies and gentlemen, new economic models are disrupting traditional economic models, relationships and regulatory approaches. Implementing innovative business models to peer-to-peer markets would bring a competitive advantage to the economy in the fourth industrial revolution. Zavod 14 is well aware of the importance and potential of sharing economy phenomenon. Therefore, we are very proud to have the opportunity to be a leading partner in our forthcoming publication titled Opportunity and Challenges of the Sharing Economy in Europe, which will be later also briefly presented. We believe it's important to create the right environment for the sharing economy to develop in a balanced way. That means without disregarding consumer and employee protection and without favoring one business model over another. Horizontal approach, working closely together across different ministries for a coherent and balanced regulatory framework is therefore strongly needed. Just before I conclude, let me just inform you that in 2018, Zavod 14 will host also another European Liberal Forum event, which will most probably take place on 22nd November on European regional development issue related especially to the smart cities and communities, another important issue for sustainable and balanced future development of modern societies. On behalf of Zavod 14 and our partners, let me finally wish you an interesting and fruitful discussion and hope to meet you again at our next events. Thank you.
Thank you. Today we have with us a guest from the Ministry for Economic Development and Technology, Mr. Franz Stanonik, General Director of Internal Market. Mr. Stanonik is here instead of State Secretary due to his urgent parliamentary obligations. So, Mr. Stanonik, please join me with a short address in Slovenian.
Dobar dan, lep pozdrav. Najprej bi resnično rad upravičil ministra Počivalška in državnega sekretarja Cantarutija, ki sta zaradi izredne seje v državnem zboru pač oba odsotna in se nam je tako rekoč porušil njun urnik in seveda potem posledično smo ostali, ki delamo na ministrstvu, prevzemali naloge. Na mene je prišla naloga, da predstavim nekaj izzivov, predvsem v zvezi s sodelovanjem gospodarstvom z okroglo mizo, ki se danes tukaj pri vas odvija oziroma celoten dan, ki ste ga namenili temu področju. Za začetek bi rad povedal, da je ponavadi zelo dobro, če se vsaj generalno vemo definicijo tega, o čemer se pogovarjamo. Pri sodelovanjem gospodarstvu je to že nekaj časa velik problem. Namreč neke generalne definicije tega področja ni, vse skupaj pač je nek generičen pojem, sodelovanje gospodarstvo je generičen pojem, ki predstavlja nove poslovne modele, ki delujejo preko elektronskih platform, sodelovanju s ponudnikom platform, preko katerih pride do svojih strank oziroma kupcev. V mislih imamo torej modele, kjer gre za pridobitno in pa profitno poslovanje. Ti novi modeli se v zadnjih letih izredno hitro pojavljajo in rastejo po vsej Evropi in seveda drugod po svetu in spreminjajo način in našo ustaljeno percepcijo gospodarskega poslovanja, gospodarskih družb. Ta hitro rastoči poslovni trend pokriva vse več področij, se pravi, da nasejem samo nekaj teh, ki so nam najbolj znani, se pravi prevozi, bivališča, prevozi potnikov, različne storitev za dom, prehrano, množičnega financiranja, investiranja, celo inštrukcij in tako naprej. Pogajajo jih tehnološki, gospodarski in družbeni dejavniki, sodelujoče spletne platforme omogočajo posameznikom in drugim akterjem, kot so mikropodjetja in mala podjetja, da ponujajo storitve in lastno blago preko svetovnega spleta. S tem povečujejo ponudbo, konkurenčnost in učinkovitost trgov, poleg tega spodbujajo inovacije, ustvarjajo nova delovna mesta, spodbujajo učinkovitejšo uporabo virov in delitev sredstev, kar prispeva k trajnosti in prehodu na krožno gospodarstvo. Istočasno lahko te nove oblike poslovanja neenako vredno konkurirajo klasičnim modelom, kajti še vedno se lažje izognejo plačilu dajatev in socialnih prispevkov za zaposlene, ker se razlike med zaposlenimi in samozaposlenimi pri klasičnem poslovanju, sodelovanju in gospodarstvu vse bolj briše. Tako se sproža vprašanje glede uporabe obstoječih pravnih okvirov, kar potencira regulativno razdrobljenost. In to je to, na kar bi rad upozoril v nadaljevanju. Ne bi toliko govoril o priložnostih, ker o tem verjamem, da ste danes že veliko govorili in boste še, gre bolj za izzive, s katerimi se soočajo države članice praktično po vsej Evropi, med njimi Slovenija ni nobena izjema. Evropska komisija je že pred 2 letoma ali celo več identificirala 6 ključnih vprašanj, v katerih naj bi države razmišljale o urejanju novih modelov poslovanja, pri čemer naj bi pazile na to, da ostanejo ti modeli inovativni in odprti razvoju. Kot je bilo že predhodno omenjeno, to so pač izzivi, ki naslavljajo zahteve za dostop do trga, ureditev odgovornosti v primeru sporov, varstvo uporabnikov, gre za uporabnike na nivoju podjetij in na nivoju potrošnikov, samozaposleni in zaposleni delavci, se pravi delovnopravno zakonodajo, potem je obdavčenje in pa še 2 vidika bi temu dodal, to sta odločitev države, ali bo postavila meje med stalnim in začasnim opravljanjem dejavnosti preko določene platforme in pa odnos platforma-ponudnik. Glede zahtev do dostop trga, Evropska komisija poudarja, da bi prožnejše regulacijo trgov storitev vodile k večji produktivnosti ter olajšala vstop novih akterjev na trg, znižala ceno storitev in potrošnikom zagotovila večjo izbiro. Popolne prepovedi in količinske omejitve so le skrajni ukrepi v primerih, da ni mogoče uporabiti manj omejevalnih zahtev za doseganje javnega interesa. Kar se tiče ureditev in odgovornosti v primeru sporov, treba povedati, so pogodbene in nepogodbene odgovornosti določajo nacionalni predpisi in zavisijo od vloge oziroma nadzora nad informacijami, ki jo platforma ima. Če je platforma lahko izvzeta iz te odgovornosti, se ugotavlja za vsak primer posebej, odvisno od stopnje znanja oziroma nadzora nad podatki, ki jih gosti. V primeru, da je platforma izvzeta, se ji ne more naložiti splošne obveznosti spremljanja in dejavnega iskanja dejstev in okoliščin, ki kažejo na nezakonito poslovanje. Kar se tiče varnosti uporabnikov, tako potrošnikov kot podjetij, zakonodaja EU o varstvu potrošnikov in trženju tradicionalno obravnava posle, v katerih obstaja šibkejša stran, ki potrebuje zaščito. Običajno so to potrošniki. Sodelovalno gospodarstvo pa ta razmerja malo spremeni med potrošniki in podjetji. To razmerje sedaj večstransko in vključuje posle med podjetniki in potrošniki, med podjetji in med potrošniki samimi. Pri teh razmerjih ni vedno jasno, kdo je šibkejša stran, ki jo je pač potrebno zaščititi. Prožnost sodelovalnega gospodarstva ustvarja nove možnosti zaposlovanja. Delovni pogoji temeljijo na posameznih nalogah, ki se opravljajo priložnostjo, kar odpira trg dela tistim, ki jim tradicionalno delo ne ustreza ali pa ni na voljo. Delo tako pogosto ni redno in stabilno kot pri tradicionalnih oblikah, kar lahko povzroči negotovost glede veljavnih pravic in stopnje socialnega varstva. Meje med samozaposlenimi in delavci so vedno bolj zabrisane, vedno več je dela na krajši delovni čas in vse več oseb z več zaposlitvami. Tako je komisija v okviru Evropskega stebra socialnih pravic začela posvetovanje o tem, kako najbolje obravnavati potrebo po večji udeležbi na trgu dela, zagotavljanju pravičnih delovnih pogojev ter ustreznem in trajnostnem socialnem varstvu. Minimalni standardi delovnega prava Evropske unije ne zajemajo vseh vidikov socialne zakonodaje, države članice pa lahko postavijo višje standarde, ki naj bi bili upoštevani tudi pri sodelovalnem gospodarstvu. Zato bo v prihodnje, pa je že v teku z tega vidika zornega kota, neka, bom rekel, nova definicija delovnega razmerja. Definirati je potrebno tudi merila podrejenosti ponudnika platformi in pa oceniti ustreznost nacionalnih predpisov oziroma o zaposlovanju ob upoštevanju različnih potreb delavcev in samozaposlenih oseb v digitalnem svetu. Kar se tiče obdavčenja, to je ena osrednjih vprašanj, osrednjih izzivov, s katerimi se države članice soočajo pri soočanju z novimi gospodarskimi trendi sodelovalnega gospodarstva. Težav na tem področju je kar nekaj, gre predvsem za težave pri identifikaciji davčnih zavezancev, pri identifikaciji obdavčljivega dohodka, pomanjkanje informacij o ponudnikih storitev, agresivno načrtovanje davkov od dobička pravnih oseb v digitalnem sektorju in pa razlike v davčnih praksah držav članic EU in pa nezadostni menjavi informacij. Cilj držav članic je seveda prizadevanje za sorazmerne obveznosti in enako konkurenčne pogoje, zaveščanje o davčnih obveznostih, seznanjanje davčnih uradnikov s poslovnimi modeli sodelovanja, izvajanje smernic in povečanje preglednosti s pomočjo spletnih informacij. Zdaj, na našem primeru Slovenije imamo primer kar uspešnega delovanja FURS-a v odnosu do ponudnikov bivališč preko Airbnb-a. Praksa, ki jo je naš FURS v tem smislu uporabil, se pravi večkratno obveščanje preko medijev, je obrodila sadove in teh, bom rekel, samo prijavljenih ponudnikov bivališč, kratkotrajnih bivališč je bilo ravno zaradi, bom rekel, dokaj uspešnega delovanja FURS-a v nekaj mesecih kar veliko, tako da se je odstotek teh, ocena, da je odstotek teh, ki, bom rekel, še vedno na črno oddajajo svoja bivališča preko Airbnb-a, se je zelo zmanjšal. Nekatere države sicer tudi pristopajo problemu tako, da so izdale smernice v uporabi nacionalne davčne zakonodaje, ureditve, druge pa razmišljajo o spremembah svoje zakonodaje. V Sloveniji zaenkrat na tem področju ni tega razmišljanja. Evropska komisija glede stalnega in občasnega poslovanja, Evropska komisija izrecno poudarja razlikovanje med sorodnimi akterji, to je peer-to-peer, ki zagotavljajo občasne storitve in poklicnimi ponudniki storitev, ki zagotavljajo storitve na trgu kot profesionalci. V okviru upravljanja svoje poslovne dejavnosti. Mikropodjetniki in mala podjetja vse pogosteje uporabljajo platforme za sodelovanje. Od tega razlikovanja je namreč odvisno, katera pravna področja se uporabljajo za vsako skupino posebej, vsako skupino deležnikov znotraj modela sodelovanega gospodarstva, na primer zahteve po predhodni odobritvi za dostop do trga, glede varstva potrošnikov, delovnopravne zakonodaje z področja socialne varnosti, odločitev varstva in konkurence in vse tako, kar je bilo že omenjeno. Države članice, med njimi tudi Slovenija, uporabljajo različna merila za razlikovanje med poklicnimi storitvami in začasnimi storitvami. Nekatere države članice so uvedle razlikovanje za uporabo pragov. Ti pragovi so pogosto določeni za posamezen sektor, za različen sektor, pri čemer se upošteva raven ustvarjenih prihodkov ali rednost zagotavljanja storitev. Se pravi, prag je lahko glede na prihodek ali pa na čas opravljanja neke storitve. Pod temi pragovi za ponudnike storitev običajno veljajo manj omejevalne zahteve. Razumno določeni pragovi lahko pomagajo oblikovati jasen regulatorni okvir v korist nepoklicnim ponudnikom in torej v nadaljevanju ne zavirajo razvoja modelov sodelovalnega gospodarstva. Kateri so možni regulatorni pristopi odločevalcev? Na trenutni stopnji razvoja notranjega trga Evropske unije ni pričakovati harmonizirane regulacije sodelovalnega gospodarstva strani Evropske komisije. To je prepuščeno posameznim državam članicam, pri čemer morajo pri regulaciji posameznih področij upoštevati veljavni evropski pravni okvir. Evropska komisija je sicer letos pripravila predlog uredbe, ki naj bi uredila odnos ponudnik platform, ki je trenutno v obravnavi na svetu, vendar se ta zakonodajni predlog omejuje predvsem na področje kratkočasnega oddajanja nepremičnin, ker je to očitno med državami članicami bilo tudi neko področje, ki je bilo najbolj izpostavljeno in najbolj problematično. Sicer države članice pri izzivih iskanja ustreznega regulatornega okvira za sodelovalno gospodarstvo so izbrali različne pristope za različna področja in sicer od popolne prepovedi do izenačitve s tradicionalno ekonomijo, strožje uporabe že obstoječe zakonodaje za poslovne modele, uvedbo dodatnih pravil za sodelovalno gospodarstvo, poenostavitve pravil in dopustitve samoregulacije med akterji. Kar se tiče Slovenije, je verjetno vam je poznano, da je bil v letošnjem letu celo podan nek predlog zakona za urejanje teh zadev, ki je potem iz nekih razlogov, ki so bili vezani na prenehanje mandata vlade, ni uspel oziroma se njegov postopek ni nadaljeval. Sicer pa v Sloveniji razmišljamo predvsem v tej smeri, ne, da je treba na nek način dopuščati te modele, vendar jih je treba v vsakem primeru okviriti v način, vsaj v največji možni meri okviriti v obstoječo zakonodajo. To je zelo pomembno predvsem pri vstopu na trg zaradi konkurence, zaradi konkurenčnih pogojev, pri obdavčitvi, pri varstvu potrošnikov in pri spoštovanju delovno-pravne zakonodaje. Koliko nam bo to v nadaljevanju uspelo, težko rečem, se je pa izkazalo, da neka hitrost pri urejanju tega področja niti ni dobra, ker se s časom to področje izkaže kot področje, ki se lahko samo regulira. In to se dogaja in trenutno tudi strani vlade ni nobenih intenc, da bi področje kot takšno reševali z nekim, bom rekel, zdaj novim horizontalnim zakonom. Hvala lepa.
Hvala lepa. As it was said earlier today, the event is co-organized by European Liberal Forum, shorter ELF, and they publish many valuable publications which you can find on their webpage. One is also about new economic models. I kindly invite Mr. Eric Lies from ELF to present it.
Thank you very much. I won't stall the discussion but much more so you can all get into it, but I'm just going to briefly then talk about what ELF is, European Liberal Forum, and then the context of this seminar. So European Liberal Forum is a pan-European political foundation, liberal foundation. So we work as an umbrella organization for liberal think tanks throughout Europe and try to support them and fund them in all kinds of different ways. Also, we are the political foundation of the ALDE party, which is the liberal party group in the European Parliament. So, and one of the projects, to give you a context of this event, is that we had this new economic models project going on now for 2 years. And one output of that was this book. I brought some copies of it. It's over there. Not enough, apparently, I'm realizing now. But if you want one and you don't get one, I will make sure that you get one in one way. So, new economic models is, of course, all kinds of new economic businesses, and that comes from this new digitalization, robotization, artificial intelligence, and so on. And of course, sharing economy is one important part of that new economic models. So it will be very interesting to see the discussion on that. We have one chapter on that, also written by one of the panelists today, Jan Kessler from IPPS, one of our member organizations. And so I'm very much looking forward to that. And also, I would encourage you to follow us on Facebook or Twitter. You can find them a little bit. It's just behind the chair over there, but I'll bring you some over there. Very good, thank you. We have some cards over there also. So yes, I think that was it for me this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Today there was a very interesting workshop called Opportunities and Challenges of the Sharing Economy, and Dr. Petra Weingerl from University of Maribor, she will tell us more about conclusions and commentaries. Please.
So I'll use PowerPoint. Hi. Okay. So first of all, I would like to stress, excuse me, that I'm acting as a substitute for Professor Janja Hojnik, who is the editor of the upcoming publication, Opportunities and Challenges of the Sharing Economy, published under the auspices of the European Liberal Forum. So today, basically at the conclusion of our workshop, we realized that there are more open questions than we had at the beginning. So I assume that that is a good thing. And one of the main conclusions that we reached is that concepts need to be clearly defined before we can have any discussion, meaningful discussion on sharing or collaborative economy. So what is it that we are actually talking about, right? Are we talking about sharing economy or collaborative economy? Or are we actually talking about a usual economic activity in the online environment, right? So it all depends. So the current, not current, but the legislative proposal that was proposed to the Parliament earlier this year dealt with something that we could call actual sharing, peer-to-peer transactions. But we also discussed collaborative models today. So basically we are talking about the business models based on sharing, swapping, renting of products and services that are typically underutilized for monetary and non-monetary benefits. And what matters here is that we have three categories of actors. So basically service providers, users, and of course intermediaries that connect them. And from clear definitions of all these actors, the application of the relevant legislation depends on the clear definition of all these relevant actors. And we will discuss this, I believe, into more detail later in the discussion in the round table. So, but basically, what is usually meant by sharing economy is access-based consumption. So consumers pay for the use and not for the transfer of ownership. So this is something that is traditionally understood as sharing economy. And this is, of course, not a new phenomenon. But digitalization gave new dimensions to the sharing economy. And I'm sure that you've heard of all these expressions before, but it doesn't hurt to repeat them. So, for example, of course, the world's largest cinema owns no cinema halls, right? The world's largest taxi company owns no vehicles. The world's largest accommodation provider owns no real estate. And the world's most popular media owners creates no content. Of course, now if I come back to concepts, all these multinational giants aren't caught by the legislative proposal that was actually proposed to the Slovenian parliament earlier this year. But now if I continue with, because I know that I'm sure, if we continue with our presentation of our upcoming publication that is edited by Professor Janja Hojnik, I'll make just a brief presentation. So it comprises of 10 chapters dealing with challenges posed by the sharing economy. So it begins with the chapter written by Professor Hojnik. And in this opening chapter, she examines different forms of business models that are premised under the concept of collaborative economy and sharing economy, and attempts to define and differentiate them. And then in the second chapter, Tomislav Jurman, okay, I can show you this here, right, focuses on legislation regulating sharing economy that is under preparation in Slovenia. And he points out that it is obvious that sharing economy can be viewed from several perspectives, and its limits should be determined accordingly. But what his chapter points out is that not all actors in this field are multinational giants. So further, we have two chapters that are dealing with on-demand labor. So firstly, Jan Klesla gives a more economic perspective of the topic. And then his chapter is followed by a chapter by Valentina Franza that is focusing on the implications of the gig economy for employee representatives. So thereby pointing out that the issue of protection of gig workers is greatly affecting the role of trade unions, considering that gig workers are usually isolated, organized as self-employed, working for more employees and at different workplaces or even just online. So then labor implications are followed by a chapter of Nana Šumrada-Slaunić, who focuses on the tax implications of the collaborative economy. And then I focus on the consumer implications, emphasizing that the concept of the sharing economy poses several challenges for the existing consumer acquis in the EU and in the member states' legal systems, as it is not always possible to fully or adequately apply the existing legislation to legal relationships involved in online transactions. And then this chapter is followed by 2 chapters dealing with transportation services. So considering that Uber is in many aspects representative for collaborative economy, Katja Wiesiak in her chapter gives a concise overview of principal court decisions regarding some legal dilemmas triggered by one of the most notable business models in the area of collaborative economy. And then more specifically, Lukasz Dabrosz and Mateusz Sabat focus on regulatory challenges related to ride-sharing in Poland. And then this chapter is followed by extensive chapter by Anna Vlahek and Matija Damian on regulatory challenges of short-term apartment rentals via digital platforms in Slovenia. And then finally, and this is something that I put on the first slide, Ana Jereb and Primož Rojac investigate if also the delivery of legal services is a candidate for a sharing economy model. So I hope that you will find something interesting and also useful in this upcoming publication. It is going to be published in October. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Weingerl. And now is finally the time for the roundtable discussion. I invite Mr. Gregor Plantaric. He will introduce his panelists. Enjoy.
Thank you. As we said, welcome to our roundtable. Now I will invite our guests to come on forward. So please, Dr. Petra Weingerl, to take your seat. Thank you. From the University of Maribor, as you heard. Some applause, please. Thank you. Then I would like to invite Mr. Lukasz Dabrosz from the Nowoczesna Party from Poland. Thank you, some applause, thank you. Then Ms. Esther Nova from Financial Research Institute from Hungary. Please, some applause, thank you. I cannot say whole thing. Then Mr. Ivan Vrdoljak, from the president of the Croatian biggest liberal People's Party, and also he served before as also as the Minister for Construction and Minister of Economy. Thank you. Some applause, yes. Then Dr. Matija Damian from University of Ljubljana. Please, take your seat. Thank you. Then I would like to invite Mr. Pavel Peterka from the Center for Economic and Market Analysis from the Czech Republic. Here it is. Thank you. And finally, but not the least, Jan Klesla from Institute for Politics and Society from the Czech Republic. Please take your seat. And by any chance, my name is Gregor Plantaric, and I will be moderating this event, so not the one which you should focus on. Thank you all for coming, and also you from the public. Later in the discussion, of course, you will have all the opportunity to put questions, because that's why we are here, to answer questions also. But for the first warm-up and a little bit, I would kindly asked our guests to introduce a little bit themselves and about their work. So let's start here with you, Mr. Lucas.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Łukasz Dąbroś, and I work as an economic and political analyst for Nowoczesna. It's a Polish classical liberal political party and a member of the ALDE group. And I am here because of the fact that in my party I was responsible for preparing the law proposed by us about ride-sharing in Poland. We were the first political movement to understand the importance of new transport businesses, and we proposed a bill to create a regulatory framework for these solutions. And as we are an opposition party now, the bill is unfortunately frozen in the parliament, but anyway I will be happy to share my experiences that I got while I was preparing the proposal, as well as attending public hearings in order to understand the points of view of stakeholders. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thanks a lot for invitation to this, for the invitation to the workshop and to the roundtable as well. Well, my name is Jan Klesla. I work for the Institute for Politics and Society. It's a political think tank, well aligned with our currently biggest party in our parliament, ANO. Well, the member of ALDE that won the elections, the last parliamentary elections, and formed the government. So currently holds the position of prime minister, as well as the minister for economy and the minister of transportation. That gives us a little bit of opportunity to propose new regulations. And well, actually, we are independent on the party. We have this. It's important to stress out that we have the same system, almost the same system as in Germany. So we can't propose it like the law, like you can in the parliament, but we can propose the policies. We are very much focusing on the labor market, on the so-called gig work. We prepared some time ago the so-called Uber index. That's something basically comparing the earnings and incomes of the Uber drivers among the Europe and with other countries like United States. Long story short, the sharing economy hasn't yet proven the potential for raising incomes of the drivers and others. I think it's because of the legacy regulatory barriers and other problems we can discuss further. And I also believe that the gig work will be quite important in the future as the answer to all the trends like automation and the rise of robots and et cetera. So this is the reason why we really focus on this issue with regards to the special situation of Czech Republic and its economy. So, well, looking forward to discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Dr. Estanova, and I'm a lecturer of political economy at various universities in Budapest and Prague. And that's also my approach to this thing. So it's a bit more practical and political as opposed to purely economic or business. So that is probably what I would like to contribute to this discussion most. And I have written extensively about specifically the Hungarian situation in terms of what we call the sharing economy, or whatever you call it, Uber and Airbnb in particular, and try to kind of take a step back and see whether these problems are actually the sharing economy's problems or something else, or how politics and the various political interests interfere with these things and mud the debate to the point where we are really just yelling at each other and people hate Airbnbs and Ubers and whatever, rather than actually assessing it as it is in reality. Thank you.
So my name is Petra Weingirl, as you already know. So I work at the University of Maribor at the Faculty of Law, and mostly I deal with consumer protection aspect of the sharing economy, and I also obtained my doctorate in the field of consumer protection at the University of Oxford.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Ivan Verdoljak. Let's say last 10 years professional politician, but before that I was the private entrepreneur. And I will try to discuss in two ways, like colleague says, from the business way and politics way, but shortly. During political life, I was the deputy mayor, the minister of construction and physical planning, after that the minister of economy, the member of parliament, then deputy speaker of the parliament. Lots of things in a short time. That means nothing lasts too long. Today I am the president of the Croatian People's Party, Liberal Democrats. That is part of the government. I am not the part of the government because I was too tired, and I have lots of colleagues that are better than I in energy and ideas. But I have opportunity to join you on this event. Thank you.
Hi everyone. First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation and for having me here. My name is Pavel Peterka. I come from Prague. I'll answer the question right away. No, it's not normal to wear sneakers with a suit in Prague. I just left my formal shoes at the office when I was running to catch a plane. Yeah. So what is sharing economy to me? Me and my colleagues are working at the Center for Economic and Market Analysis, and we tackle those issues regarding sharing economy. Whether it's sharing or not, it doesn't really matter. It's the opportunities that we are looking for, and I hope to have a fruitful discussion with all of you here. And thank you again.
Thank you. Well, my name is Matija Damjan. I come from the Faculty of Law here in Ljubljana. More specifically, it's the Institute for Comparative Law. Now, one of the fields of my research is housing legislation, so this is the aspect of the sharing economy that I have dealt with, and we co-wrote one of the chapters in the upcoming publication with Professor Vlahek. So this is the part that I can discuss Airbnb and stuff like that, which turns out not to be very exciting in the end, but still relevant. Well, that's law for you.
Thank you all. Just to know that here are some microphones. Perhaps they can, I will put it on, inside here, in case you need it. So let's basically warm up, because also I see a quite experienced politician among us. We were talking now from the economic point of view, what this sharing economy means, what could be the definition and everything, and which could be the best definition, and we saw that it's actually quite a challenging also that. But I see also behind this, of course, also some kind of political dimension of it, you know, like some political, not only economic ideology behind. Like there will be some kind of clash, you know, some classical or neoliberal meaning, you know, pure business, just digital, or, you know, and then on the other side, just like some kind of social liberal meaning, let's say, like sharing assets or services digitally, and the profit sit on the second place. So what are your thoughts on that? Perhaps I can start with you, Mr. Klesla.
Okay. Well, at least in Czech Republic, there is quite different discussion about Uber and Airbnb. Those are the basically main issues. In case of Uber, the big benefit for the company and for sharing economy is that everyone in Prague hates taxi drivers. Well, those guys are a shame of our country. They are pretty famous. They are pretty famous for cheating the tourists, and you know, they usually ask for excessive price, so don't use taxi when coming Prague. Well, actually, that's one thing. The second is that since the Uber started in Prague 3 years ago, usual people, voters, started to use
other means of transportation, Uber, or we have also Taxify on our market, and of course it also makes some kind of pressure on the taxi drivers. So you can see clearly the benefits for the voters. On the other hand, the Airbnb is being seen by many as one of the drivers of hiking prices for rents and for usual flats in the center of Prague. So basically, the Airbnb is quite unpopular, whilst the Uber is, we can say, popular. So from the political point of view, it's quite clear that as a politician, you don't have any reason to support Airbnb. And yes, you can support Uber, but you don't have any reason to support a multinational company. But there is no really political opposition, no real political opposition to Uber or to sharing services in transportation. Our Minister of Transportation is currently preparing the liberalization of the rules. So yeah, unfortunately, I think there will be some kind of regulation of Airbnb after the elections next week, because we are, among others, electing the mayor of Prague, and Prague's got legislative initiative. So there will be probably an regulation of Airbnb proposed for the reasons I mentioned.
Thank you. Perhaps I can colleague Peterka, because, and let's stay at the Czech Republic, and to go even more into the issue, because I'm sure that you are the Center for Economic and Market Analysis. You go quite into details about these kind of things.
Yeah, this is true. We went through the whole taxi driver thing and both the housing market in Prague. So I'd start with the taxi drivers. Mr. Klesla said that actually people in Prague kind of hate those taxi drivers. I have something to support it with. There was this BBC documentary 6 years ago about sketchy stuff that's going on in Prague. And yeah, they found out that the taxi drivers are actually cheating a lot. There's also a TV channel on an online television stream that is run by a person from like a regular citizen, you could say, that was trying to prove that the taxi drivers are stealing. So he filmed like hours of material proving the statement. Prague taxi drivers have even reference in American pop culture. I don't know if you know the TV show Gilmore Girls. Yeah, so yeah, even when they were referring to, let's say, not really honest person, they said he's as honest as a taxi driver from Prague. So even Americans know that taxi drivers are a problem in the Czech Republic. To explain why is it a problem? So to become a taxi driver in Prague, like a legal taxi driver, you have to go through 5 different requirements. Me and my colleague ran a study. We hired a person that went from the day 1 till the very end, and we found out that it takes more than 2 months to become a taxi driver in Prague. So like if you decide that you can like earn some money as a taxi driver, it takes you 2 months, and during those 2 months you have to visit public office 8 times. Some of those offices you have to visit like more than once. So it takes about like 40 hours of your time to actually fulfill all those requirements. Some of them are probably good, the others not so much. Example of a good one, they have to have some sort of a knowledge about the regulatory environment, what it means to be a taxi driver, what they have to do for their customers. Example of a bad one, they have to go through a test where they have to memorize all the street names in Prague, and Prague is quite huge. In the age of GPS, smartphones, and like interactive maps, this seems to be a bit excessive. So, what environment does it create? The laws were created with the best intentions, of course, to, how to say, cultivate the market, to set a certain standard for those services, because not everybody has his own taxi driver. You switch those drivers, you switch those companies. And they wanted to make sure that there is a certain standard. But after time, it changed. These taxi drivers became more a cartel than actually a competitive market. So they actually, as we said, are stealing, not all of them, of course, some of them are honest. And this type of behavior was accepted because not everybody could be a taxi driver. So that there couldn't come, well, it was hard to be a competitor that came to the market and he could start like providing better services for lower price because there are the barriers to enter the market. So that's where we get to the excess economy, how some call the sharing economy itself, where there was lots of effort from government officials, from city officials, to actually break the cartel of those taxi drivers, and they never succeeded. And then there is this mobile application that is like 150 megabytes, and they kind of solve the problem, right? It's Uber, yeah. They're not following all the rules. That's maybe what we should say in the first place. That in Prague, the sharing economy is in some sort of a gray area where nobody actually knows whether it's legal, whether it's illegal. But the thing is, maybe we shouldn't look at it from the perspective of the law. The laws were written to protect the customers, to cultivate the market, to create better conditions, but in the end they made it worse. And then there is somebody who breaks the laws but actually fulfills their purpose, even though when he's breaking them. So I won't make it too long. What I wanted to say, that this new era of digital technologies can actually improve our lives, and we should learn from it and like embrace it rather than like ban it or regulate it. And if it's sharing economy, or if it's standard business, if it's collaborative economy, doesn't really matter. There is opportunity and we should take it. Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps I will ask Mr. Vrdoljak, how is the situation actually in Croatia? How do you tackle these issues, and do you have any kind of solutions to these kind of questions?
Yeah, but okay, I will tell the story about Croatian situation, but more or less I will tell some things how we look in that kind of economy.
Thank you.
For example, everything is working there. We changed the law, and now Uber is Uber, and everybody using, and everything is okay. But those drivers need to have some sign on the top of the car. For me, it's stupid, but like it's taxi. Like now, it's everything okay. If you put the sign, everything is okay. And then people register in Uber, put the sign, don't drive anybody, but drive to the lines where the buses goes. You know, you can use it as stupid things because you name it taxi, but it's not taxi. Taxi is something, it's Uber. If you do the foolish thing, you're finished in a foolish situation anyway. That's why you should be, how I can say, not fear some kind of absurd situation, and then politicians, including me, if you think, what will happen, what the people will say, or something. But more or less, we don't have any problem. We have regulation problems because we all politicians want to take some taxes more than we get it from such economy. Other things is in a controllable position. But look, if you ask politicians what is the role of politics and governments in regulation of the business that's coming in your country, don't ask for any kind of permits and just jump in a country and trample riding on a technology horse. What to do with them? They don't ask me nothing. They don't need any kind of permits, and they are everywhere. The key, I will say my answer. I have probably, we have in this room about 20 answers on that questions, but at the end, after 2 minutes. Second thing that I want to point is that Uber or Airbnb we have in Switzerland, Pakistan, China, Caribbean, San Martin, or Belarus or Sweden. Doesn't mean 40,000 people or 1.4 billion people. $87,000 GDP or 1,500 in Pakistan, or democratic level, doesn't matter, they're everywhere. When I was the Minister of Economy, I spent millions of hours to move Croatia on doing business lists, from some 86 to 42 in 3 years, and we are celebrating. And Uber and Airbnb working in Pakistan or Bangladesh, that is 176. It's totally absurd that I lose for some part of my time, that there is coming technology and economy, that they don't use historical investors' appointments, markets, people's, I don't know, education, doing business list or something. They don't use it, they don't need it. It's totally new. And what is my point is that those kind of sharing economy business definitely changing the way how we should run politics. It's opposite. Always everybody wait for us. Change the law, doing some permits, rules, put it everything, and after that the business is coming. Here is totally opposite. They are coming and then we jumping. If we are too slow, we lose 3 years. If we are too quick and flexible and educated, we can do it, some benefits for society from those businesses in 1 year, whatever. That means they show us, I don't wait for slow politics. I will go anyway, and if you want something, please contact us on some big number. And at the end, before my answer on this question, what is the role of politics in these situations, I think one more story. Few days ago, I read the newspaper, and we have some kind of agriculture business, Apple, and the guy had a problem with the labor force. There is no people who want to work with to pick up those apples. And second problem was the price of those big distributor. And he didn't know what to do. And he opened the gate and said, whoever wants to pick up the apple, he can do it for 3 kunas, it's, I don't know, 1.5 euros per kilo, and solve the problem. People come, read the news on the portals, come, take 5 kilos, pick up, go home, pay it, and everything, and that this price is better than he get it from those distributors. It's happened sharing technology in a situation that laws, market, block the system and kill somebody that probably doesn't deserve, I don't know, and it's blocked, and then you have option. And now they are making the application for all Croatia. In Monday you can have carrots in Zagreb. In Friday you have apple in Split. It's a great idea. Go there, pick up, pay it for the low price. It's sharing economy that show up because the system was not good. At the end, my answer of this question, what is the role of politics and governments in regulation of the business that don't ask you nothing? I think that we all will learn that the only answer, beside all problems in regulation that you can see it now with the customer protection and everything, the only thing that we can do is learn it and be educated and use it. Learn it and use it. It's the only way. Use it in the political system, sharing economy. It's the only way how we can follow all fast processes that show up in front of us. And I think that all other options that you can think because of the fear to stop that, don't do that. You're losing the time.
Thank you. Well, they do say that law is the frozen politics, no? In the way that it's perhaps behind time or behind. But the state should, you know, I would say, have in mind all stakeholders, so us consumer citizens, as also companies, so somehow they should find a way also to perhaps protect one which need protection, but not, of course, with some kind of restrictions. So perhaps if we are already mentioned consumers, Dr. Weingel, what are actually the options for consumers, or but also which traps are holding this kind of sharing economy and this kind of models?
So basically, the most pressing question is whether the consumer protection legislation actually applies to a concrete case. So there are two underlying questions that need to be answered. First, whether consumer protection applies, and second, against whom. So who is the one that is liable for the proper fulfillment of the transaction, of the contract that has been concluded online. So why? First of all, of course, consumer protection legislation applies only if two conditions are fulfilled. Firstly, if the provider of services or goods is a trader, can be qualified as a trader, and secondly, if the buyer can be qualified as a consumer. So, of course, this is pretty straightforward in traditional business models. If I go to a supermarket and buy some bananas there, it's obvious who is the trader and who is the consumer in this transaction. But lines become more blurred in the online environment, where also consumers can act sometimes not as, basically almost as professionals, right? We call them prosumers or hybrid consumers. So the question is whether one, let's make it in a more structured way. So first of all, of course, the legal relationship needs to be properly assessed and qualified. So again, we come back to concepts, right? And the second layer is that here we don't have this not normal, I apologize for this word, but the traditional binary relationship, bilateral relationship. Here we have three parties. So the platform, the provider of services or goods, and the customer. So basically the question is, with whom is the customer actually concluding the contract? So sometimes it's obvious. For example, I don't know which example should I give now, but for example, eBay. We are talking about transfer of ownership there, of course, but just for the sake of for the example. So on eBay, it's mostly obvious that you are, who is your contracting party, right? It's not eBay, but some company or some natural person is behind this ad. But with Uber, there's a different story. So basically, consumers think that they are contracting with the platform itself, not with someone behind it, right? Well, it depends on your point of view, of course, but that's how the Court of Justice defined it. So basically, here the question is, when a natural person concludes the contract with another natural person, can the consumer protection still apply? And when we, no? Well, if that would be so simple in the online environment, then of course we wouldn't have any problems, and we could say that consumer protection can be normally, fully and adequately applied. The existing consumer protection could be adequately applied also to the online transactions. But sometimes problems arise. For example, just as is the case with Uber or some other platform where the customer doesn't really know with whom he or she is actually concluding the contract. So here, what happens is, so the platform can play a double role, right? It can be either a provider of information society services, and that means that its role in the actual main service contract is actually passive, and in that case, you're right. So consumer protection legislation won't apply. But if the platform's role is more active, then the platform can be qualified as a trader. And then also consumer protection could apply in that case. So it all depends on the qualification of the platform, so of the parties to the contract. Because we have this e-commerce directive in the EU that contains the hosting exemption. So if the platform can actually be qualified as a simple provider of information society services, then you're right. Okay. So, yeah.
Thank you for now. My next question is going to be to Dr. Damian. You mentioned that you actually researched the regulation of short-term apartment rentals via digital platforms in Slovenia.
Yeah.
And this is especially interesting because of this tourism and that it's rapid growth, global tourism, and plenty of people are seeing this as an opportunity. So what were your findings actually?
Well, exactly like I said, the issues of the regulation of the Airbnb and similar platforms, there's a number of such platforms actually for... Yeah, I hear that. Thanks. We call them the short-term rental platforms. Okay. Now, the issues mostly come up in countries and in cities that deal with a huge influx of tourists, which are now increasingly using these kinds of online services to get accommodation. Now, and the common reaction of countries or regions or cities is to try to regulate this activity and to somehow limit it. But the reasons why they want to do it are not the same in all cases. So maybe the most common reason is to prevent tax evasion, so to make sure that providers of such types of accommodation will still pay taxes and will not be a unfair competition to traditional hotels and other hospitality industry. Another reason why they want to limit Airbnb, the use of Airbnb or the making available of apartments on such platforms is to prevent the negative effect of such activity on the housing market, because the rents go up, the prices of apartments go up, so it happens very easily that apartments in city centers are not accessible to regular residents because they're all being used up for tourist accommodation. Now, in some cities that deal with the highest number of tourists, the purpose of city authorities is simply to limit the number of tourists. This is the case in Barcelona, for example, which simply limited the number of apartments that may be rented out on Airbnb. It turned out to be a rather ineffective measure, yet it is there. And finally, from the classical housing law perspective, one issue is how to protect the interests of other apartment owners, particularly in multi-apartment buildings. Because obviously, when you have a number of such apartments that are being rented out on a regular basis, it doesn't look like you're living in a proper residential building. It's like you're living in a hotel, so people are coming and going, they're throwing noisy parties and so on, which affects obviously everyone in the building. And now a common feature of all attempts to regulate such activity, a common problem is that it's, like Petra said before, it's very difficult to distinguish between an activity that is a proper sharing economy, where people are, for example, occasionally allowing other travelers to use their apartments to stay there, or in cases where this is already a proper business activity, an economic activity which is being carried out for the purpose of making profit. Now, extremes, it's very easy to define the extreme cases, obviously. For example, there are typically no legal problems with couch surfing, which is also one such platform, but it's based on a non-profit basis. Hardly any legal problems in the housing legislation level, at least. On the other hand, we have a case where an apartment owner doesn't own just one apartment, but has bought several apartments, only for the purpose of renting them out on a platform. Now, this can hardly be called a sharing economy. It's a regular business, isn't it? But many cases are somewhere in between them. So most of the attempts of creating specific rules to regulate sharing economy in this field in short-term rentals is to create some sort of limits to determine what is still considered a sharing economy and what should comply with the legislation on regular business activities. And now, if we compare the solutions in various cities, they differ quite a lot, but the most common feature is that they want to try to limit the number of days that an apartment can be rented out under this short-term rental regime, so to, in this way, distinguish it from the regular long-term rentals, which are much less regulated. In Slovenia, we currently don't have any specific legislation in this field, so it's, again, hard to say when exactly you are in one sphere or in the other. The owners that are renting out their apartments on Airbnb usually very often rely on the regular rules of the Housing Act, which weren't meant to regulate such activity, but were meant to regulate a long-term housing rentals. Whereas if this was considered a business activity, then they would need to comply with various other requirements, such as agreement of all the other owners in the building, or at least a certain majority of the owners, which typically is not obtained. Unfortunately, we are in a very unclear legal situation in many fields.
But for the tax office is what quite clear, ne? Yes, I think it was mine. The tax office actually did step forward, and the people had to report their activity, no?
It doesn't. Yeah, it works. No, I just turned it off to stop the noise. But unfortunately, the tax aspect of this legislation is quite separate from the other aspects. The tax office is just happy to collect the taxes and doesn't care about the other issues. So even if that is sort of solved, it doesn't create any more legal certainty in other areas of law. I think it's you can hardly find a case of short-term tourist rental that's available on a platform. If we're talking about a multi-apartment house, multi-apartment building, you'll be hard-pressed to find a case where everything is entirely legal and all the approvals have been obtained to make sure that it works fine.
Thank you. You wanted to comment, Mr. Wadoljak?
Sorry. Thank you. I will do it this way. Okay. I have some experience in Croatia about those tourist challenges. How it was before. Because my sister, cousins lives in Adriatic Sea, and I know the history stories. Today we have this agenda. Is it business or not business? He rents the apartment in his third floor and and it's a problem for a physical planning. But what was before those applications? You jump out from the airplane, and hundreds of people show the sign, I don't know, rooms, Zimmerfrei, and standing there. You should send about a squad of policemen to arrest them. Why? Because they stay there with the sign. And you do nothing. And it's functioning for 20 years. Now there is no people on the streets. There is no those ugly pictures of the people who rent the apartments, private apartments, during last 15 years, all the time, with the signed Zimmerfrei. They do it by the application. And the tax office can catch them in 2 days, because you can see everything. With those applications, we solved the problem. Not we, they solved our problem. It's happened because you cannot stop that. And if you put the big taxes, then everybody run. If you put a lot of taxes, everybody pay because of the free of the mind. And it's happening now. That means I don't see the problem in that kind of, it's a physical planning because you have the physical plan, the part for industry, the part for tourism, the part for householders and such kind of. But it's main problem because the householders cannot live in industry or the sports in recreation because there is no schools, kindergartens. Not the opposite. Not the opposite. Because if you have less citizens in the householders region, then you have less infrastructure needs. I was the Minister of Infrastructure Physical Planning. That means that opposite is the problem. If you bring the people in the tourist area or the industry area to live there, then you have a problem because there is no healthy kindergarten schools. Opposite is not a problem. That means I don't see, of course, you must follow the trends, the challenges, do some steps. But happens in Croatia, signed Zimmerfrei, or the tax office go and see who put the apartment on the rental. Please give the money and everything is okay. Thank you. It's good that you have 5 because
at least one is going to work then at the end. Perhaps here also the general director mentioned self-regulation, that a lot of things it's actually already self-regulated by the market itself or by the people itself. For example, also in in a big house. Now, if there are plenty of people living there, if they do not allow them to do R&B, then already with the rules there, it's over. Or if you're renting for somebody in your contract is saying you are not allowed to, and this is done by law which is already existing, you know. So this is also something.
If it's your cousin?
Yeah, you know, this is then.
Friend from France.
Yeah, but.
I cannot bring the friend in my flat. Why?
The, yeah. That's why this is why it's hard, because you have also we have to keep balance probably from before. So actually, I would go then to the Hungary, Ms. Nova, and here because you also wrote a few articles about, and especially that you have that R&B, and that it's also some other pressures of on the property market through that, and perhaps also how is then in situation in Hungary.
Okay, thank you. So I'm not going to elaborate on the details of how much Hungarian taxi drivers are similar to the Czech ones, because I think it's pretty universal. So it's a sort of self-selection of cunning and shrewd elements of the population who dare to go out and drive cars. So let's just say the situation started exactly where it started in Prague. So even in the pre-Uber years, or maybe months, when taxi companies saw Uber coming, they kind of very generously offered to pull some more regulation upon themselves. That if it sounds odd, it is because it's not as straightforward as you may think. So first of all, they offered a lot of regulatory things, like they are going to be colored regulatory yellow. So you go to Budapest now, it's just the last 2 or 3 years that they are all yellow, this very soothing, calming yellow that put, yes, and of course it increases the barrier to entry to newcomers. So if you want to become a taxi driver, not only do you have to qualify with a new car, with that whatever, but you also have to have it yellow, and which incidentally only, I think, one company is allowed to do, and you can guess how they got that license. And, but there were also very, very important things like exactly which date they changed the tires to winter tires and that sort of thing. So all these customer safety things were offered. Yes, and you perhaps understand that this doesn't really make us any more safe. So taxi drivers can still move the meter with their minds if they want. The regulatory yellow fake taxis are just as yellow as the real ones. So now tourist goes out, sees this beautiful yellow car with all the signs that real taxis have on it, including the official rates. And they jump in it, and Hungarians stand next to 3 such cars and don't see a single taxi around. So that's why sometimes my foreign friends don't understand why I stand next to 3 beautiful yellow taxi-marked cars and say, there are no taxis, because these are not exactly taxis. But it gives you the sense of safety, a false sense of safety. So none of these regulations actually help, but the most important one I left for last is they ask for a fixed price in exchange. Now, before that, there was a competitive market. So there was the cheap car, where was always smelling of cigarettes or dogs, and they were playing some weirdly nationalist music. But they were very cheap per kilometer, very rude drivers. But if you go for the money, that's your bet. Or there were the very civilized ones, so you knew if you were a company and you wanted to send someone to pick up your clients at the airport, you went to this company, because they all spoke English, they all accepted cards back in 2005, they were all wearing at least a white shirt. And so it was completely civilized. You could ask for a lady driver, whatever you wanted, you got it. It was perfectly functional. And then Uber came to the scene. And at that point, regular taxis had this fixed price, which was way above the previous market prices. And Uber didn't. So at some point there was this very short time, there was this not kind of regulated part, and then there were, of course, a tax on Uber, so that they accepted all the regulations, a lot of safety things, not the yellow, we didn't get that far. And you would think that their biggest problem was that they wanted to get their cut, the state's problem that they wanted to get their cut in taxes. They got it immediately. Not because Uber wanted to pay taxes, but because they made all their drivers to become what we call forced entrepreneurs. So basically people who become this legal entity to issue these ugly handwritten invoices after the drive, and then pay taxes after that, just you take care of it as a driver. So from the tax point of view, they were in the clear very quickly. And yet they were still banned. And there is no Uber in Budapest right now. There is Taxify, the Estonian company works, but they work at the fixed prices. They are regulatory yellow. And, well, that is the situation. So you don't really understand why this happens unless you understand politics. Now, let me tell you the story of Airbnb, because there's another very typical story there. So I couldn't be more understanding of people who are concerned about price rises, both on rental and the property market. I am renting, and my landlord raised my rent by 50% and then by 70%, and just this morning I got an email that he's going to ask me to leave because he found someone who pays a lot more than I do still. And I'm also not going to be able to buy because Budapest property market is so hot that statistics are very poor, so we're really just looking at the websites, the biggest property websites data, that prices really doubled every 2 years for the last few years. And it's so hot. When I was actually researching these issues, I got advertisements from Google, for instance, that buy property in Budapest, 27.5% year-on-year return. That's not healthy, no matter how we look at it. And so obviously, Airbnb was really, really hated. And of course, it's easy to hate. You see these people. You see the people pulling the suitcase. You know that your neighbor is making money, and the good old-fashioned envy really makes you remember that hatred. And then, of course, prices are going up, and you might be priced out of the market like I am. So it's easy to hate Airbnb. And journalists didn't have the situation. They, of course, they read the New York articles, they read the Barcelona articles, they read the Berlin articles, and they wrote their Hungarian articles about how these few thousand Airbnbs downtown are really responsible for all the price increases. And at that point, I'm an economist halfway, so please, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I looked up Airbnb data, how many of these apartments there are, and not to mention the poor quality of some of them. It's really just a few thousand, and we're talking about a city of 2 million people, roughly. And yes, there are a lot of tourists, and of course that is upward price pressure. I understand it. So New York prices didn't become downwardly flexible because the same Airbnb travelers could also come to Ljubljana, but Ljubljana prices can go up because the same people who could also go on a holiday in New York had the same sort of purchasing power. So that's perfectly understandable, but that doesn't explain all the price increase. What explains it is, so this is the amount of money that maybe Airbnb brings in as tourism. And there is this avalanche of money coming in from, how do you call them politely? Well, China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and the sort of places where are marvelous economies, as we hear from our government, except people who make their money there don't want to keep their money there and try to invest it in something more safe, like in a country where private property is more respected. So they come and buy properties in bulk. Just how much this avalanche of money is actually impossible to estimate, because if they buy through a Hungarian or European legal entity, they are no longer in the statistics. All we know is if these legal entities or individuals who buy these apartments are actually Russian or Chinese or whatever passport holders, and then they make it into the statistics, and you see these huge number. And there is anecdotal things everywhere. So one day you're looking at a not yet built apartment in a 100-apartment residence, and you just want to look at one of your starter homes because you want to start a family. It's 50 square meters. It will be built in 2 years, and maybe I can get a mortgage out and ask the agent if, and you go home with the little catalog and try to decide, and next day you call them and they say, okay, everything is sold. What, overnight 100? Yes, to the same person. I had this conversation with a random real estate agent. I overheard a conversation on the phone, and it was so weird that I had to ask. It was a stranger we met on the streets of Zagreb, actually, and he was speaking in Hungarian very loud because, of course, he was rude, and also he was working, and I didn't understand. I'm sorry, I overheard you. What was this conversation about? And he explained that he's now new to the company, so he has this minor Chinese client who wanted to buy 25 properties in Budapest, didn't visit Budapest. All he wanted that all 25 properties must overlook the Danube, so must have a great view. And now that he got it, minor client, and this agent wanted to organize a small boat trip with folk music and traditional Hungarian food to point out that that is yours, that is yours, that is yours. And maybe if this client is satisfied, maybe he will really start investing. So, and that is just a tiny, tiny beginner property agent. And of course, these people buy these apartments and don't necessarily even put it on the rental market. The point was not that they would actually start to make profit out of it, but to actually save their money from another government that is maybe great for business, but terrible for private property. And so there is the price pressure for you. Actually, and yes, the other thing, whether the Hungarian government got any cut out of Airbnb, yes, they did. And Airbnb was allowed to run. So what's the difference between Uber and Airbnb, you might ask, because one of these things was banned, the other was not, and both is politics. And as any taxi driver can tell you today in Hungary, the minister, as they refer to this guy, bought himself into one of the biggest taxi companies, and now that taxi company doesn't only receive all the major licenses like airport and then these things, all the festivals and whatever, but also he was very much interested in the fixed prices, the increased fixed prices, got it. Also very much interested in getting rid of Uber, he got it. And as a result, today, if you want to order a taxi in Budapest, downtown, broad daylight, you might have to call 5, 6 different companies, and they will keep you on hold for 20 minutes each, and then they announce that we cannot send a car in the foreseeable future. It happens so often, it's ridiculous. There's a huge shortage, despite the increased prices, because also the cut that they have to give to their parent company has increased. And even taxi drivers know that the best work for the company that's owned by the minister. Because, if any other regulation happens, that company won't be hit, but all the others might. As opposed to Airbnb, the same. Minister starts buying up downtown properties, everyone knows it, it's well documented in the media. Prices start skyrocketing once all these acquisitions are made. They profit on every level, even if they want to sell it, even if they want to rent it, even if they want to Airbnb it. So it's great. It's fine by them, so Airbnb can stay in Budapest. So there is no other. That is why I said that before you look at any sort of regulatory explanation why this regulation is in my defense or in my protection, just forget it. That's not about consumer protection. So these were the very practical comments that I wanted to make, and maybe theoretical if we are going to discuss it.
We'll see, how the further goes discussion. Thank you. Perhaps, yes, please.
Well, if I may offer the view from the other side, as a tourist, last year I decided to visit the beautiful city of Budapest again, and for the Brain Bar Festival, that is marvelous, by the way. And quickly I realized that the prices on Airbnb are somehow, higher than on Booking.com. Well, so yeah, that was, I was curious why, but still, cheaper prices, lower prices, lower price. So I rented an apartment via the Booking, and it was just for 2 or 3 nights and for 300 euros. So finally, a really nice lady, came and opened the apartment. It was not really nice, but that doesn't matter. And I was like, okay, it's 300 euros. Do you accept credit cards? She said no. So I asked at least for a bill. So she said something like, yeah, it's 400 with a bill, 300 without. The point is that. And I said it before, but let me stress it out. It's about the tax evasion, and if you allow something like that on your platform, you, like the booking clearly does, you are allowed to provide the services because the opposition in the country from the lobby groups and other guys is significantly lower than if you are a global company providing the service on some kind of standard, like usual in civilized countries. Let me mention just one more thing. We are talking about Airbnb and Uber the whole time, but for instance, in Prague, it is not in the situation with taxi drivers and etc. etc. It's not about Uber against the rest of the world. We do have Taxify on our market, operating on our market, and we really want a MyTaxi or Cabify or other application on our market as well. We really need the competition. We really like the idea of 3, 4, 5 providers. Even the best case scenario is to have the Czech Uber or any other economic model providing the shared services like in transportation or any others. Unfortunately, the only Czech applications or Czech-based applications are not like the real sharing economy ones. Those are just providing the usual taxi services, etc. So for me, it's about opening the doors to competition on the one hand, and on the negative side, it's about the tax evasion. So yeah, and Budapest and Prague and probably Zagreb, well, those are the clear examples that it's quite simple, this problem, and we can solve it. We know how to solve it. It's just about the politics and lobbying. That's it.
Thank you. Soon I will give the opportunity for your questions, dear guests in the public. One question to our colleague here, but just think over what you would like to ask. You have now approximately a minute to come with a question. Mr. Dabrosch, sorry. You were talking about ride-sharing as one of your projects as a challenge to passenger transport regulation. So could you describe it a little bit and the whole process, perhaps?
Okay, so as it has been already mentioned, I was involved in proposing a ride-sharing law in Poland, and the core of the law was to create the regulatory framework for ride-sharing, because right now ride-sharing operates in a so-called grey zone, a legal vacuum with no legal certainty, no rights guaranteeing consumer protection, and in fact the status quo is hated by everyone, starting from ride-sharing firms, because they feel threatened by legal uncertainty, also by passengers, because they do not know if their service they are using is legal or not, as well as by traditional taxi firms, because they feel that ride-sharing companies have advantage that's not fair because of no regulatory framework and unclear tax situation. So our plan was to create a law that was quite similar to the law that has been already passed in Estonia, that allowed ride-sharing firms to operate as long as, first of all, internet platform like Uber or Taxify shares financial data with tax authorities in order to make ride-sharing drivers paying proper taxes. Moreover, we wanted drivers involved in ride-sharing to have a special, I wouldn't call this a license, but to be registered for tax and business authorities in order to make it possible to control them, and we wanted also to make it clear who is responsible in case of a traffic accident. So we organized a public hearing with stakeholders, so with representatives of ride-sharing firms, with traditional taxi firms, as well as with think tanks and organizations representing consumers. And what was really interesting that, of course, ride-sharing firms supported our proposal because they wanted to have clear legal situations because costs of legal uncertainty were high for them. We were also supported by large taxi firms because they will believe that our proposal will make level playing field in the transport sector. The only group of interest that opposed our project was small independent taxi drivers because they feel threatened by new business opportunities, as such businesses often offered substandard quality. However, our law is now stuck in the parliament because our party is an opposition party. So the ruling party, Law and Justice, tries to block the law in order not to make it not to make us gain some political benefits for proposing and having this law passed through the parliament. And we hope that we'll finally manage to pass the law because the topic is now becoming really hot in Polish politics. For example, on October 18th, traditional taxi drivers, especially the small independent drivers, are going to block the city of Warsaw to create traffic jams. They say that it's their protest against unfair competition posed by ride-sharing. And what's more, in October we are going to have municipal elections in Poland, so we assume that candidates will try to present their statements and their plans regarding ride-sharing, and that's why we hope that we will manage to wake the topic up and create some political debate about the problem. And of course, the reason why small independent drivers try to block the law is, of course, regulatory rent-seeking. Because, as I said before, the standard, the quality of their service is substandard, and they believe that high barriers to entry allow them to extract additional regulatory benefits because of the unfair competition. And as they are independent, their main mode of business is taking drivers from stands or from airports, and they profit from information asymmetry. For example, as it was already mentioned in the case of the Czech Republic or Hungary, they often are not really honest, and they are afraid that if someone who doesn't know the city arrives to the Warsaw airport and he wants to take a ride to the city center, he will take an Uber because instead of taking an anonymous independent taxi. So they perceive ride sharing as a threat to their business model. And to end up, we'll see what will be the political result of the protest that's going to take place in October, and maybe we'll manage some major candidates to present themselves as supporters of ride sharing, because I believe that the number of voters who use ride sharing services is far bigger than the number of independent taxi drivers who want to block the law in order to seek rents from a current status quo.
Thank you. So, please, questions. Please, the microphone is coming from this side.
Hello, if I may introduce myself, my name is Matej. I am from Slovenia. I heard that the problem is about taxation of these new business models, as you mentioned before, Uber, Airbnb, and so on. I heard that the European Union proposed that these companies would be taxed in a way that we would to tax their digital presence. For example, if Uber has its headquarters on some small country which pays very little taxes, but it operates as a multinational all around the world. How would you tax a company like this? It is virtually impossible because it offers only a service. It offers a service. It does not offer full-time employment, only it's a platform. So how to tax this? I heard that maybe the answer is to tax the digital presence. If I give an example, like Uber, I don't know where it has its headquarters, but if Uber's drivers work in Ljubljana, for example, let's say use their mobile app, for each and every time the Uber drove in Ljubljana, the government of Slovenia would tax the company and send the tax bill to its headquarters for each and every drive due on its digital presence.
Thank you for the question.
The question would be, what is your opinion about this way of taxation?
First, probably to clear that we are not tax experts.
I explained one problem in tourism. From the Zimmerfrei signs on the paper, we have digital reservation and payments. When you pay by the car, look how easy it is. Maybe I give too much support because I'm digital, I'm IT, I'm engineer of electronic IT. Maybe I'm too subjective, how I can say. But look what's happened. You have illegal taxi in Zagreb who drive you from the airport to the center of the town. You should pay 200 kunas, you pay 400 because he said 400, there is no bill, and it's out of the country. And you have Uber. There is no cash. Where there is no cash, it's just the question what country wants to do with it. Because the list in a card, you have everything. You just make a decision. You want 10%, 5%, 100%, kill the business, whatever you want. But there is no cash. There is no way, if I drive the Uber, to avoid taxes, if the government says to me, like a driver, you should pay for each transaction 5%. How I can avoid that? To ask cash of the user of the Uber, he said, look, I don't pay Uber cash. Because if I want to give the cash, I will not call Uber. It's so easy. It's just decision, what do you want to do? That's the bless of technology. Because you control the way of payment. You have the public application who rents the apartments and the price for the tax office. You never had that. And your decision, how? I don't prefer any. Of course, you must take some taxes of that. I don't know, is it 5, 6, 25? It's not, it's too complicated topic, but easy to get it, the money. And you just put it and said, look, the price of Uber 1 year ago in Zagreb was 50% less than normal taxi. Today, 10%, 20%. There is no such big difference. Because they are higher and higher. Of course, there will be 10% less. But it's not a question of the price anymore. It's a question of the use it easy and frequently and fast and everything. That means some other. For taxation, it's not a problem. It's a question of what will be political decision with all risks that you have in a public society.
Just one further question for the auditor. I would like just to ask, would the country want to enforce regulation on this kind of new business models, or would it let it just go with the flow?
No, of course, you cannot just let it. But if you don't make regulations...
So you are supporting
please.
The regulation of this kind of new business models?
On a just low level, just framework.
Thank you.
Leave the people to use it. Just low level and taxation. When you put it in taxation level, everything else you should control. The main event is, because we're talking about Uber and Airbnb, there is no such there is, but not such big risk of consumer protection. But there is lots of other sharing economy application that goes in a healthy, in a food, that can be a problem from consumer protections. There is the point that the state should protect those with the high penalties, prisons, big taxation, big penalties, whoever do that, wherever you live in Europe. And motivate it, use it, Airbnb, rental apartments with low taxation. That's why, because everybody will pay that, and you have a clear picture what's happening in the market.
Okay, here forward, please.
Okay, so to answer your question, in our legal proposal, the idea to tax ride-sharing firms and drivers was straightforward. First of all, ride-sharing platforms like Uber or Taxify would be obliged to register in Poland as VAT taxpayers, and what's more, they would be forced to share the data about rides and drivers with financial authorities, so that in fact they process all the payments, they collect all the data about drivers and their income, so they would just have to share the data with the Ministry of Finance, and that's how income tax on the drivers would be imposed. So for me, it's due to the fact that all these transactions are made online with cards or internet payments, it makes it far easier to tax Uber or Taxify drivers than, for example, people operating in the shadow economy who have no track of their business.
I just wanted to thank to our Croatian friends, because you actually provided us with the solution. I mean, actually in the Czech Republic, because Czech government introduced the so-called electronic evidence of taxes system that is directly inspired by the Croatian one. And yes, there's a huge discussion about it, and there's a lot of bugs in the system, and well, that's for hours, but there's one single purpose that this system fits to, like, perfectly, and that is the sharing economy and the Uber and the Airbnb. Uber actually made an agreement with the Czech government to basically connect with the government system, and well, case closed, problem solved. And you can both tax the drivers and the company, because you get the turnover of the company. So and the service is clearly provided in the Czech Republic. So yeah, under the EU law, without any technicalities, you need to pay the taxes in Czech Republic, and of course the drivers can't evade the taxes. So, well, yeah, someone can say, okay, that's you know, Big Brother stuff, but it's about taxes. Come on, Al Capone, well, did serve his time not for number of murders he committed, but for tax evasion. So yeah, we can solve this problem. Again, it's just a matter of political will, and yeah, the lobbying, etc., etc.
Can I have a quick comment on the taxes? Just a real quick. You were mentioning the taxation in like headquarters in tax havens. It's maybe an impulse to think about whether we're not living in a tax hell. That's a real question here.
So I would like to make one general observation as a lawyer. It seems that everyone is associating regulation with either killing these new business models or imposing some severe penalties, even prison. So I just wonder why is there this mentality there, because like everyone should, of course, play by the same rules, right? If you play football, it doesn't make sense to play it if both teams don't respect the same rules, and if one of the teams doesn't, then it's a foul, right? So why would someone, this is just some food for thought for all of you, but why would someone benefit from, let's call it unfair competition, but we can also call it by not having to play by the same rules? So what is the rationale behind this? So just...
May I just give you an answer as a lawyer? Well, basically, because the regulation we are talking about, first, we are all liberals, so we basically do not like a lot of regulations. But the real answer is that the regulation we are talking about is the bad one, that the one that hinders competition. We are not talking about the same playing by the same rules. Of course, taxes, yeah, that's the playing by the same rules. Consumer protection, by the way, all the safety regulations we need. For instance, Czech Minister of Transportation proposes, some minimal safety regulations for the drivers. Just look at the city of Chicago. They allowed Uber to operate in the city, but they imposed new and very strict regulations regarding the safety and, of course, other new regulations regarding, by the way, the safety of both drivers and passengers. To all providers, Uber and taxi drivers. So yes, we are not opposing regulation in general. We are just talking about tearing down the walls of barriers to entry to the market. Yeah, economists would say. So, this is the difference.
Something too? No. Okay. You want to say something? Yep. Okay, please.
Okay. To continue on the topic, the problem is that sometimes regulations that are imposed officially in order to protect the consumer are a consequence of so-called regulatory rent-seeking. I mean that some business groups that have large political power and feel that their position is threatened by new ideas, new businesses, involve themselves in getting connected to politicians in order to obtain regulations that are beneficial for them but harmful for the entire market. And in political economy we have this so-called the problem of collective action, that a small group of people who have a lot of money to lose if, for example, new businesses are allowed, they are strongly motivated to fight in order to have their position protected by law. On the other hand, thousands or hundreds of thousands of customers who will benefit from the liberalization of the market are not possible to cooperate in order to fight for liberalization of the law, because the costs of getting connected and lobbying and trying to make politicians liberalize the law are too high for them in comparison with the costs that they incur due to protective law. So I'm afraid that that's the problem. And just the final sentence. In fact, the historical origin of taxi law was to fight information asymmetry in the taxi market. But with ride sharing, with the system of passengers rating drivers, the ratio legis, the rationale behind the law is non-existent. In fact, private platforms are better in protecting the quality than regulators. Okay, that's all.
Thank you, Mr.
Just one sentence. Do you remember football 20 years ago? Or basketball? It's not the similar like today. Even the taxi. and it will happen tomorrow. Everybody will play the same game, but it will look different. And I like football today, not 20 years ago, because it was boring, and it was something. And I want the people who do that game to make some add value, that I can look them, use them for 10 years. Because if it stays same, I will look basketball. Thank you.
Okay. Another question, I think, from the mister here on the left.
I just have one, let's say, observation. It means that we have new business models, but we still have the old issue, how to make a balance between taxes and business activities, how to arrange proper taxes, but not to kill business activities. And even new business models face the same pattern from previous, let's say, traditional business models. Just one observation.
Thank you. Somebody wants to add something to this? Thank you.
From a liberal point of view, it's quite easy, right? Low taxes are good for business, and business is good for everybody, so the solution would be to lower the taxes, right? Quite easy.
Other questions from the public? Yes. Then perhaps when we are about this, the General Director, Mr. Stanourink, also mentioned the social security issue, which is also discussed in the European Union, and that we should address also that, because are things like around work law and especially in the work relationships, which are different now, also because of so-called gig economy, now because of the temporary work, and then it's also quite a problem about the social security and what is the role of the state for it, and how should deal with it. Perhaps? Yes.
Okay, so when it comes to Poland, now unemployment in our country is record low. It's about 4.8%. So we believe that now working in ride-sharing or similar industries is a matter of choice. We are liberals, so we believe that people should be free to decide which type of work they choose. So our party believes that if someone decides to work in ride-sharing, because that's our legal proposal, if he or she decides to do so, it's his or her decision to work as an independent contractor. So he or she decides when and how she works. And if someone prefers more social security, more job stability, he or she can drop the ride-sharing job and employ himself or herself in another company. The unemployment is very low, so it won't be problematic in my opinion. So it's just a matter of personal choice.
If I may be a little bit more philosophical, in the last 200 years we have seen the struggle between capital and labor. With the technology advancement, the capital will probably win the struggle very soon. There are already voices calling for the so-called new social contract, because, and this is not a socialist stand, not a left-wing position. Even the popes are calling for fair wages, fair remuneration for work. It is quite usual for liberals to talk about the welfare state, as for instance the Economist just wrote in their new manifesto. If you read it, while the liberals introduced the welfare state. So we can say that this is a liberal issue. And we need a new social contract, because in case that gig work will be used to
exploit the labor, we will face the consequences. We can't afford that in future. I don't believe there will be something like, you know, labor market apocalypse with, you know, 50% of jobs gone, etc., etc. The jobs and work will not disappear. It's a question of income. It's a question of wages, and it's a question of the balance between the workers and the business. And I'm afraid that the gig work and the new economic models can really and unfortunately help to hinder this, the current status, the social contract we now have. And I think this is the question for lawyers and economists to introduce the right regulation and to strike the balance, basically. Yeah.
Anyone would like to add something? Yes, please.
I have a few points. You mentioned social security, right?
As also the general director, yes.
Yeah, which is mostly pensions, right?
Healthcare, pensions, probably system, yes.
So regarding pensions, I don't know, like what. It's a big topic. I don't know what the system in Slovenia is, but in short, in Czech Republic we have the pay-as-you-go system, which means that every working person contributes to a big bucket, big collective bucket, from which then the seniors are paid. When the system was introduced, it looked kind of perfect, but now with the population getting older, people living longer, you have more and more people who are actually taking from the bucket and less people who put money in the bucket. So this is, in my opinion, one of the biggest challenges, and it goes very well past the sharing economy. And yeah, to add what Mr. Klesla said, technology is proved to be a job creator rather than a job destroyer. Like 100 years ago, who would think of a career as a rocket engineer or a programmer or a, I don't know, mop designer? I don't know, like, what I wanted to say is not to be afraid of technology. It makes our life easier every day, we live longer, we have more free time than we ever had, and yeah, let's be happy.
Thank you. Anybody else? Perhaps while we are at the topic, we did discuss at the workshop before, but also the general director mentioned this real peer-to-peer sharing between them, so the consumers or natural persons between them, actually not as the consumers in this way, and then versus professionals in this way when they're sharing really their professional skills. So, and we were actually discussing, and also he mentioned, as we also was mentioning, the threshold which could be perhaps established so that the people have the opportunity to do something in their free time, to share their asset or to share their service while still they have, I don't know, a regulatory job. And then perhaps at some level, which is decided with some kind of index or the minimum salary or minimum wage or something similar, after it's crossed that line, and he can then decide, the person, that this is, he can go to the real business then model, which are quite classical then. But it's also actually an opportunity for them to acquire new skills, set of skills through the models of sharing economy or through the online platforms together with the other peers. So what are your thoughts on that, perhaps?
Okay, that was not my favorite subject that we discussed today, and you already know that. So, as of today's workshop, I learned a lot of things, and I made a short summary for myself what to consider when you consider regulating pretty much anything but the sharing economy in this particular case. One of the things was a rule about such thresholds. Thresholds create a very
muddled incentive just near the threshold. We all know the welfare trap. So just when you approach the kind of limit above which you become more taxed or less subsidized by the state, it creates a very, very bad incentive for someone to keep climbing or just to stay at that level. We know that income taxation, the progressive income taxation, can produce the same impact, that just when you earn more and you get less and take less at home, that is a very unpleasant thing to experience. And also the thresholds have a problem of enforcement. So in order to have this threshold, say whatever 500 euros or whatever we were discussing about in terms of income, it's great, but you need a 500 euro police to sort that. So that costs, that's bureaucracy, and people who are under 500 euros have to prove that they are under 500 euros. So we have this sort of added red tape. Something that nobody is really not concerned enough about is this sort of abuse of these things. So whenever politicians have these sort of levers, they try to stimulate one thing and discourage another thing, but really a lot of them are corrupt, and that they are. And that can also be a very nasty tool in someone's hand. And lastly, and this is a deeply philosophical problem with everything that we do with regulation and planning, and when we all hover above society right now thinking what should be done, and we don't really concern that what we are in this game of chess, whether we are the pawns or we are the queens. It's not a nice point of view to be in, but when it comes to these thresholds, how to put this? No, it's not just about it, but so it's a means to an end thinking. So we have something in mind, what we consider a fair amount of money to be made, and what is a sinful amount of money to be made that should be some sort of discouraged by taxes. And we also have a different sort of threshold where we consider someone doing it understandable, like I don't know, I'm a stay-at-home mom and I'm just renting out this room, versus someone who has I don't know how many properties, and somewhere in between everyone has a line in their mind. But this is a means to an end mentality, and maybe there is no end. There is no some achievable end that we want to achieve. Maybe this is dynamic, maybe society is, the world is, reality is already, we just don't want to accept it. So maybe when we regulate something, we should be better off kind of have a sort of regulation that is not just good for the sharing economy, not just for, maybe it should cover employment, the same sort of rules could cover employment. Maybe any sort of business activity should be covered by the same set of rules. Maybe those rules should be general enough so that everyone can learn them, remember them reliably. Same rules should apply for maybe more than 1 year, which rarely happens in regulatory environments. So maybe those things would be beneficial for us. Maybe it's a more reliable business environment to work in. Maybe those rules should be broad enough to cover everyone. And then we shouldn't have to deal with classification issues like I'm making money as a private person, as a company, as a in-between, as a concealed employee or whatever. Maybe if the rules are general enough, then you don't have to hunt people down, you don't have to police behavior, because it's just transparent. And enforceable more.
Basically, the problem, lawyers. This is the usual position of liberal economists. The lawyers would argue that general rules, too general rules, are unenforceable. In fact, you need some kind of legal certainty. That's also quite important for the business, and to find a balance is not easy. We were talking about so-called de minimis threshold, not the threshold for taxation. That can work, that actually works in many countries. And yeah, I know it's technocratic, and yeah, first things we do, let's go all the lawyers. Yeah.
Any would like something to add? No, thank you. Questions, perhaps? Still time for the last question. I see that you are quite, everything. So the time is actually also up, so I will conclude slowly. from what I heard here on the table and also from the workshop before, we could say actually that if there are also questions and issues and everything, and of course challenges, but if there is really some wish to regulation, it's possibly the best way, as some countries already did, to let first the businesses or whatever are the models to regulate themselves. They write down how they think should be regulated, and then go to discuss with the government what which solutions they can find. So basically, this is like called also smart regulation in this way, so that you don't really force, but you cooperate in this way. Perhaps this could be some conclusion to this. So I thank you all to coming here and sharing your ideas and thoughts with us, and of course also to our guests to listen and also for questions. Thank you all. Yes. And I give you the word.
Thank you. Thank you, dear panelists. Thank you, Gregor. Thank you all, dear guests, for coming. I hope you now have a better understanding of the term sharing economy. You still have time now to discuss with our panelists in a more relaxed environment. I invite you all for some refreshments, some good food and drinks. And I wish you all a pleasant evening. Goodbye and good luck.